Hi, my name is Amy Heath, and I'm with the Oakwood Cemetery Chapel in Austin, Texas. And welcome to the Stay Creative Summer Camp. Today, we're going to talk about architectural and symbolic imagery found in Oakwood Cemetery. Architecture is the art or practice of designing and constructing buildings. Symbols are shapes and signs used to represent something else, such as an organization or an idea. Headstones are used to mark graves and can come in many different shapes and sizes. Here is an example of different marker types. They can be found at the tops of graves. Even small markers can be found at the base of graves, which only show the initials of the person. Some markers even cover the entire grave. We can also see large sculptures at graves and large monuments such as obelisks and bi-columns. Here is an example of a gravestone with a weeping willow engraved on it. This type of monument is in the shouldered tablet shape. Now, what can a weeping willow symbolize? A weeping willow can represent the tears, grief, and sadness associated with the death of a loved one. But it can also symbolize immortality or life after death, because the weeping willow trees can live a long time and can survive through winters and storms. Here is another example of a tombstone with a little lamb engraved on it. This headstone is in the dome tablet shape. Now, what can a lamb symbolize? A lamb can symbolize purity and innocence. It is typically found on the graves of babies and children. This headstone has a picture of two hands shaking. This headstone is in the dome tablet shape. Now, what can a handshake symbolize? In this instance, it can symbolize that a loved one may be gone, but those they left behind often have hopes of seeing them again someday. It can be seen on shared graves of husbands and wives. Now, headstones can even show logos or icons of organizations that the person belonged to during their lifetimes. This tombstone is in the modern shape. Now, what organization do you think this could symbolize? This symbol is for the Independent Order of Odd Fellows. They promote the principles of friendship, love, and truth. There are different architectural periods all throughout history. A couple that are important to know about for our purposes are the Classic period, which was in ancient Greece between the 7th and 4th century BC. You can see it in examples of temples that use large columns and are very dramatic and large. There is another period called the Gothic period that was popular in Europe between 900 and 1300s. They used large cathedrals with large arches, such as the Notre Dame in Paris, France. Now, even though Oakwood Cemetery isn't that old, there are periods of architecture called revival periods that are when people try to design pieces to look like ancient periods that have passed before. So a couple examples we see in this cemetery are the Greek Revival period and the Gothic Revival period. The Greek Revival period was based off of the 5th century BC Greek temples, and it was popular in Europe and the United States during the 1700s and 1800s. The Gothic Revival period, which was based on the Gothic cathedrals, was popular in the United States during the 1800s. Here are two examples of a Greek Revival and a Gothic Revival grave marker. Now, the first one shows Greek Revival because it has columns on it like an ancient Greek temple, and it's very large. And you can see here, shown in pink, are the columns. And there are 3 different types of columns that are used in ancient Greece. And this one shows a form called the Doric columns, and they're very simple and just have simple curves. Our next tombstone we'll look at is pretty interesting because not only does it use Greek revival imagery, but it also is an example of the Gothic revival as well. It has the pink columns that you would see in a Greek revival piece, and it also shows a different type of column topper called Corinthian, and it's more ornate and decorative. The Gothic revival sections of this headstone can be seen in blue as an example of different types of arches, and the green roof is an example of very tall and pointy roof that you would see in a cathedral. Thank you for watching, and hopefully you learned a little bit about headstones and different architectural periods found in cemeteries around you and at the Oakwood Cemetery Chapel in Austin, Texas.